Hello, we're here today with Justin Ray Samron, who our third video with Justin about fermented foods. And today we're going to make, or Justin is going to make miso. And miso is a paste, flavoring paste, generally made from soybeans, traditionally made from soybeans, but today we're using chickpeas. So Justin, tell us what you're going to do.
Yeah, so today we're going to make chickpea miso. It's miso season actually right now. Traditionally, miso is made in the fall and the winter during the colder months when there's less contaminants in the air. So actually the process of making miso is very simple. It just requires just a couple of ingredients. But most of the biggest ingredient though is thyme, as we'll talk about later. But so we're making chickpea miso. Traditionally, as we all know, it's made with soybean. Over the past decade or so, I think a lot of interest has been taken to using other ingredients, such as other legumes, such as chickpeas or azuki beans. You see that more and more being sold. And so what we have here are the chickpeas that Rick has soaked and has boiled overnight. We also have some konbu, some kelp, seaweed, and we also have koji, which is a mold that we're actually going to be using.
And how's koji made?
So I'm going to start. Mixing while you're talking.
Okay.
So koji is actually a mold, a spore. The mold is Aspergillus oryzae, and it's cultivated using a substrate, and in this case it's rice. I think you sourced this, Rick, right?
Mm-hmm. I bought it on Amazon. I just looked up koji, and this is what I found. And
yeah, so this is, it looks like it's freeze-dried or dehydrated in some sort, but you could see the mold here. It's this fuzzy stuff growing on the rice. It's very interesting. It's very fragrant actually. If you happen to buy this fresh, you'll notice this very floral fragrance that's very distinct. And it's been cultivated for thousands of years actually in Japan and in China. Koji is used for many different ingredients in many different applications. Not just miso. It's koji is used to make sake, different types of soy sauce.
Wow, interesting.
A pudding called amazake. So the use of mold it's pretty prevalent.
So I soaked overnight 3 pounds of chickpeas,
Mm-hmm.
and then I boiled them this morning for maybe about an hour till they were tender.
Okay.
And so that's 3 pounds of chickpeas. And how much koji do you use then for that? What's
For this
the ratio?
one, so this one we're using about half koji, and we use about 1/4% of salt. And I just added some kelp here, and we're also going to add some miso that I made over a year and a half ago as a starter, so to help it, just start, fermenting a little bit quicker.
Sort of like a sourdough starter.
Exactly. So you have some of the live working mold there, and it's going to help activate this. So I saved some of your liquid there from cooking the chickpeas, and I'm just going to continue to add it just to make it the right consistency, which I think is a really soft Play-Doh type consistency. But that's all there is to it. So here we have the miso paste that we're going to just basically put in our container here.
How long will it take to become miso?
So
Usable miso.
Yeah, so you could check it at 3 months, at 6 months. I think that this will probably be best after a year actually, but you could start using it after 6 months, and I would encourage you to just test it out after 6 months and see if you like it.
So, and where should I, so I'll keep it in the crock, and where should I put the crock?
I would just put it similar to where you put this sauerkraut that we made or the fermented pepper paste. I would put it in a cooler, darker area.
Cool, dark place.
Yeah. You'll hear that miso is measured by the season, meaning that if miso has undergone a really hot season, then that means it's a year old. So, for example, here it will not be a year old until after the summer. And miso likes, in order to develop the flavor, I think, it has to experience that coldness of the winter and then the summer. for it to be
Oh, really?
pretty flavorful.
So what do you use miso for?
Well, of course, we all know miso as an ingredient for miso soup, but I actually like to use it in other types of soup. Make what I, call an American soup, which is after Thanksgiving. I make the turkey soup with turkey broth, and I just add a dollop of miso and some noodles in it, or some wild rice, and it's amazing. It's very flavorful. I left the chickpeas. You'll notice I left the chickpeas here. Some of it mashed and some of it whole, just to add a little bit more texture. And what I love about chickpea miso, especially if you add it to any type of soup that you want, is that you have the little bits of chickpeas in it as well.
So that's
How do you use miso?
Well, miso soup I like, just using, a dollop of the miso and some dashi powder, tofu and scallions and water is just a wonderful quick soup. It's also great, I think, as a marinade, usually with something sweet, say honey or maple syrup, and something sour, say like rice vinegar. You can use it as a marinade, say for salmon, works really well, especially if you add a little mirin to it, Japanese rice wine. And then broil or roast the salmon. You can also just coat chicken with that same paste and maple syrup and a little bit of sour, and roast chicken pieces and roast them in the oven. That's also really good. Just about anything you can use miso for in marinades or in salad dressings. It has what they call umami flavor. And umami is sort of the fifth taste. We have sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. And umami is a very rich, flavorful. The mushrooms have umami. Things like that, and just makes everything taste better. So that's what miso is really good for. It's also really good for you, wouldn't you say, Justin?
Yeah, it's considered to be probiotic. It is high in salt content, so it's used very sparingly. And of course, with your 3-gallon crock here, we're going to have a lot of miso. But luckily for us, it lasts a long time and it continues to develop flavor. The longer it sits there for.
Does it ever need refrigeration?
If you could leave it out, to continue to develop flavor. You really just need refrigeration once you are okay with the flavor and you want to just slow down the fermentation. It's sold in the supermarkets in the refrigerated section, but it really doesn't need refrigeration. What it does need, though, if you're not going to refrigerate it and you're going to let it continue to ferment, is to just make sure that it's tampered down so that it's not exposed. That we have the least amount of surface area exposed to the air. So I'm just going to pack it in, and we're just going to weigh it down, similar to what we did with the sauerkraut. Rather than covering it with your lid over there, it needs air. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pack it down and weight it, and then we're just going to cover it with a piece of cloth, just to prevent some flies and other contaminants from touching it. So I think there you have it.
That's terrific.
So almost finished packing. Actually, in Japan, what they do to help minimize the amount of air pockets is that they actually form balls with this, and then they just basically throw it into the miso.
Cool.
I'm not going to do it here just because it can be a little bit messy, and I forgot my apron. But so here we're almost finished packing it, and what we'd like to do to help also prevent mold growth, since we know that salt is great at preventing unwanted growth of molds and bacteria, is we're going to sprinkle some salt. If I could ask you, Rick, since you have cleaner hands, to just sprinkle a little bit of salt in there on top. You notice that I also added some salt to the sides.
Is that good?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. And then we're just going to weight it down. So I think what we're going to use is a random lid that you have and a brick.
And a brick covered with foil.
Yes. It's pretty heavy, right, that brick?
Yes, and we don't want to cover the crock.
No. So it does produce gas, and you want that gas to escape.
Okay.
And so all we're going to do is we're just going to cover it with a piece of cloth and just tie it around, and that's it. So I'm repurposing some old shirts that I brought over to cover up the miso. So basically, you want to use cloth to protect it from contaminants such as flies or any debris in the air. But you still want it to leave it open to the air so that the gases are able to escape.
Okay, and you want me to try this?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. I mean, later on you could just cut off the excess.
Or not. So, there we go.
There you go.
So, that's how you make miso. Thank you, Justin.
Sure, anytime.